Only the other day that polls done over the years say that the vast majority of scientists are atheists, and the vast majority of atheists base their atheism on the fact that the origins of everything can be explained by science. You don't need a God. And that's how you have so many atheists on the earth. Atheism needs heliocentrism and it needs evolution. Otherwise, they would have to admit that a God exists. The U-turn on the Galileo case led to modernism in the church. A modernism called the heresy of all heresies, as Pope Pius X called it in his encyclical Pacendi. Now, as you know, my saying Galileo's heliocentrism was proven wrong, whereas in thousands of books, articles, and millions of websites, actually, I went in looking the other day to see what websites would be on the Galileo case were there. There were 3,600,000 of them. And I went through hundreds of them, and only one by some genus actually favoured geocentrism. The rest were all heliocentrists and how the church was wrong and how science was proven right after it all. I had to study the science as well as the history of the heresy to show how the illusion was done. It's all very well for me to say that's not right or this is not wrong. I had to actually go into all these science, study them for ages and ages, and work out were they true or were they not. And we just briefly go through all of them eventually. But first, one of the main aspects of the Galileo case involved the subject of astronomy. As we see the sun and stars turning around us on the earth, it was common reason to believe what we saw. That was the old people. They would look up and see what they see, and what you see is a geocentric universe. As we said weeks from early times, some pagans proposed that it was the earth that orbited the flaming sun. Heliocentrism goes back to paganism. It was also known from early times that from the inside the universe, man cannot confirm what order is true. That's called relativity. In other words, we look out there and what we see. They have convinced you. See, heliocentrism is something of the mind. I got to get into your mind and get your mind to change it because I can't prove it. But if I can convince you that what you see is actually the reverse of what you see, then I win. Give me one firm point on which to stand and I will move the earth, wrote Archimedes, defining for posterity the problem faced by mankind in their quest to move the earth. Unless you went outside the universe and looked in at it, could you see what is actually fixed and what moves around it? You have to be outside it. From the inside, you can't tell. And Archimedes knew that, and that's what he wrote. In the Bible, however, it states in many places that it is the sun and stars that orbit the earth, a revelation that confirmed it was the sun and stars doing the turning. Because God is the only one out there who can see inside the universe. For the Catholic Church then, the Bible told the truth of astronomy, and from the earliest times condemned the pagan heliocentrism because it contradicted the Bible. Not because they were anti-science. It contradicted the Bible. Now, astronomy is basically a visual science conducted from an earthly premise. It has three functions: watching the movement of the heavenly bodies, charting them, and finally trying to figure out their relative movement. Which way are they moving, and so on and so forth. This exercise is known as saving the appearance. This old adage really expresses a mode of knowledge whereby a person reaches conclusion from using his or her senses. A more precise understanding of this idiom goes something like this. From the earth we see the sun, moon, planets and stars move in relation to us, and in the case of planets, move in relation to the sun and us. Based on these movements and using any instrumental help we have available, we save on the chart what we see or what appears in our vision. This means plotting the daily, monthly, yearly and multi-yearly tracks of celestial bodies as they appear. Once all the motions are accounted for and saved, then one can try and create an overall working model that tries to match these recorded movements. The only difference between the ages are the methods and instruments used, and finally the amount of visual magnification available. That is, from the naked eye of the old people to the telescopes, and of course time in which man can record and complete data on the relative movements of the three-dimensional universe. You need a lot of time. You need a year to find out that the sun goes around us in a year, and you need more years, and so on and so forth. And look, the history of astronomy is one quite fascinating that Domenico Cassini, 1625 to 1712, using the means given to him by King Louis XIV, I beg your pardon, sought this history up to time through study of the oldest and rarest books on the subject. Cassini wanted to know the history of astronomy, and he was able to get books thanks to his king, who had people all over the world, and he got them all, and he gave a summary of, and it's really worth listening to the history of astronomy. And this is what Cassini writes. There is no room for doubt that astronomy was invented from the beginning of the world. And there is nothing more noteworthy than the regularity of movements among these great luminous bodies that turn unceasingly around the earth. It is natural to think that one of the first interests of men was to consider their course and observe their periods. That mere curiosity alone was not solely responsible for leading men to set themselves astronomical speculations, for it can be maintained that necessity as well obliged them. For should one not observe the seasons that vary by the movement of the sun, it would be impossible to make a success of agriculture. Were one to fail to note the suitable times for travel, one could establish no business. Should one not have determined once and for all the length of the month and the year, there could be neither order established between civil affairs, nor could days be marked out for religious purposes. Hence, as agricultural, farming, commerce, politics, and even religion cannot do without astronomy. It is obvious that men must have been obliged to study the science right from the world's beginning. Both sacred and secular history confirms this truth. What the Holy Scriptures reveal about the years that the ancient patriarchs lived up to is proof positive that the first men studied movements of the stars. For had they not taken account of the exact number of days that last in the varying phases of the moon, which serve to conceal the months, and of the number of months during which the sun little by little approaches the zenith and afterwards distances itself from it, marking the changes by increased and diminution of the days, which allow one to establish the length of the year, there could not have noted the number of years each patriarch had lived, nor times their birth and death as precisely as Moses recorded in history. Now, if you read Moses, you'll find that he actually numbered the years. And you will find that that was turned into what's called Catholic martyrology. And indeed, during Lent, that martyrology is mentioned during Lent. But as far as the truth of it now, it's a load of nonsense, according to modern science that the church has taken on itself. So it no longer believes all these periods that are in Genesis. And Cassini goes on, and there certainly was need in the first age of the world to observe the stars with a great deal of care. For the circumstances of the history of the great flooding, which also is reported in Genesis, one could see that the year from the time of the deluge was regulated following the movements of the sun and the moon, which suppose a boundless number of observations. It is yet to be understood how all the application imaginable by the first men studying the sky could have gained them so much knowledge of the movement of the stars, unless their lives were longer than ours. You know, if you only live 80 years, you're confined to 80 years. But if you lived longer, you could study the movements of the stars for longer. By the living of such long lives gained for them great advances in astronomy. You know, the Bible says that the ages that they... Adam, wasn't it? Adam lived, what was it? 930 years or something like that. Of course, they wouldn't believe that anymore, you know. The Jewish historian Joseph Flavius, 37 to 100 after Christ, was of the opinion that so necessary was this science that one of the reasons why God granted the first men such long-lasting lives was to facilitate for them the knowledge of the movement of the stars. Astronomy then became the science of emperors and kings, the first and most important developed natural science for mankind before and after the global deluge. Cassini goes on to tell us how astronomy allowed the unassisted man to venture over great land masses from Spain to China, while at the same time enable them to voyage through the seas and great oceans of the earth. He shows how maps of the world were created with astronomical help, and how the same art of measuring led Alexander the Great and his army deep into territories that nature seems to have hidden away. But there was yet a higher purpose to astronomy. And Cassini adds, to what we have said on the usefulness of astronomy, one can add the advantages that have been drawn and continue to be drawn every day. Of course, he was writing this back in the 17th century, for the propagation of the faith, because it is by the use and protection afforded by this science that those dedicated to preaching the gospel to the infidel penetrate the furthest countries and live there not only in safety, but with full freedom to preach the truths of the faith, that they draw the admiration of the peoples, and they work their way into familiarity with the powers that be, and even win the favour of sovereigns. Thus, this science has opened up to missionaries the vast empire of China, whose entry was forbidden by the laws of the land and for reasons of state to all foreigners, and it was used to obtain permission to build churches there and publicly to practice the true faith. This is why King Louis XIV wanted the missionaries who go to preach the gospel to China in the kingdom of Siam and in other states of Eastern Indies to be instructed in the ways the Academy makes observations, and that they take from it every ample memories of what they have to do and remember in their travels. They used to get the missionaries, teach them astronomy, how they could, and when they go to these foreign people and they were told, they were seen as gods practically, because it was such a wonder and useful science for them to know. Now, in the 2nd and 3rd century after Christ, there emerged a man of great genius named Claudius Ptolemy, known as Ptolemy. Today he's known for his work on geocentric astronomy, astrology and geography. He, it can be said, produced the first concept of the universe with the Earth at the centre and the Moon orbiting the Earth, outside of which are Mercury, the Sun, Mars and Saturn. Next came Copernicus. Copernicus, in his book The Revolutionary Bus, the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus, this is a quote. As early as 1543, in his book The Revolutionary Bus, the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus had proved that the sun was the centre of the universe. He didn't prove anything. He just wrote up a heliocentric version of the universe, which I'm going to show you now in a moment. A century later, the Pisan astronomer and physicist Galileo Galilei, using the new refractor telescope, once again showed that the Earth revolves around the sun. He published his proofs several times. That's from a book by J.E. Lewis, The New Rights of Man, Robinson. So straight away, once they talk about it, they say proof. Nicholas Copernicus marked a milestone in human history when his book, The Revolutionists, on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres, was published in 1543. It was presented to him when he had a stroke on his bed, and he died as soon as he got the book. He never saw it printed. The reason why this event is recorded in history with such vivid details, because it's this book, centuries of propagandists would have us believe, and as our opening quote shows, Copernicus supposedly proved our world is not geocentric as man heretofore believed, but heliocentric, with the Earth spinning on its axis and orbiting around the Sun. In fact, this newly published book, shown to Copernicus as he lay dying from a stroke, was not new, but an updated and more detailed version of a work which was ignored and he had circulated over 20 years earlier. His mathematical presentation of a system that depicted the Earth as a planet, Copernicus' solar system, had in fact emerged earlier in 1524, when he issued an unsigned and untitled manuscript, later named Little Commentary. This work was intended to see what reaction his Heliocentrism would have among other philosophers at the time. It was a complete failure. They ignored it. So he gave up, Copernicus gave up writing his book. Now this is a very important bit of the Copernican story, which I don't think anyone, very few people know. Of interest is that a Protestant named George Joachim Reticus, 1514 to 1574, who was a student and later mathematics professor in Martin Luther's University at Wittenberg. A recent informative book, however, by Professor Daniel Danielson tells the story of the close relationship between Copernicus and George Reticus. His research reveals that were it not for Reticus and other Protestants of the Reformation, the revolutionary bus most probably would never have seen the light of day. Professor Danielson goes on to say this was Martin Luther's best known doctrine. And this is a quote. If someone equipped with the tools of reading could interpret the text either of the Bible or the book of nature, independent of intervening layers of authority, that's outside the church, whole new possibilities of understanding could emerge in the natural sciences as well as in theology. So Martin Luther says, if you could find something out there in science that could contradict what's in the Bible, I'm on my way. That could be the start. That's the start of how we will overturn it all. It was the Protestant, indeed, it was the Protestant, let me see now. It was the Protestant Reticus who first came up with what I call Galileo's new dogma. Now, throughout the history of the Galileo case, once they thought they had won it, they had to do this U-turn, and they had to find some way of, oh gosh, you know, the Bible's been, oh gosh. He came up with, the Bible is not a science book. It's not a book that teaches us how the heavens go, but a book that teaches only spiritual things, how to go to heaven. Now that has become the dogma of modernism. The Bible doesn't teach us how the heavens go, but how to go to heaven. So in other words, there's no science in the Bible, right? Now, one of the reasons I tell you it was the Protestant rhetoricians who came up with that code is because later on it's attributed to Cardinal Baronius, a Catholic. Do you follow me? And then to Galileo himself. But it was the Protestant who came up with that sign.
I just hope, you know, she goes in, she's confident, she's her, because you can't afford it.
Now, if you read those thousands of books telling us Galileo was right and the church was wrong, you will read the church never had a problem with Copernicus and his heliocentrism. They want you to think that this makes the 1616 decree of Pope Paul look over the top. The reason why the church, every book you will read, they will say the church had no problem with Copernicus's or his book, that they allowed it for 100 years. So they weren't really, but they don't tell you why, because that's another little hidden secret. And here's why the church never had a problem with Copernicus or his book. Okay. In his book, Copernicus' book, there was a preface, and here's what the preface said. And if this book constructs to think up causes, and it certainly has thought up a good many, nevertheless, it does not think them up in order to persuade anyone of the truth, only that they provide a correct basis for calculation. Maybe the philosopher demands probability instead, but neither of them will grasp anything certain or hand it on unless it has been divinely revealed to him. So in other words, now what happened was, Copernicus got sick, the book went to the where all the new books were being printed by the Protestants, and a man called Osiander, he was the one who was in charge of the final print. He put this into the book because he knew the church would condemn it unless it had a rejection that Copernicus was proposing heliocentrism as a truth, only as a means of mathematically following the sky. And then, okay, now at this stage, I'm going to show you the three systems that we're talking about, right? This is the first one here, that's Ptolemy's. This one here is Copernicus's, and this one here is Tycho Brahe. You can show that, spread them around there, and you'll see the three different systems. Two of them are geocentric, and Copernicus's one is heliocentric. Along came another Copernican called Johann Kepler. He's credited with measuring the orbits of planets as ellipses, a measure held in our time. In fact, Kepler's ellipses was a compromise between two measurements. I looked up how Kepler came to his conclusion. And he found that in one case it was so much and another was so little. And he said, now what would the compromise be? An ellipse. So Kepler is reputed to have discovered that orbits are ellipses, right? So that's very important in the mathematics of what we're dealing with. Galileo and his heliocentrism was next. He claimed one tide in the Mediterranean proved that the Earth is revolving. He didn't know that in the Mediterranean there's so little tides that he thought there was only one tide. And when they told him there's two tides in the Atlantic Ocean down the road, he said, you're lying, I don't believe you. Now this guy, Galileo, is called the father of science. And he didn't believe that there were two tides. And he thought there was only one tide, so that when the Earth goes around the sun, that causes that one tide. And he said, that's my proof that the Earth is heliocentric and spinning. There was very little, remember that. So sure was the correct order of the university that he said the Bible had been read wrong in its geocentrism, and its geocentrism was metaphoric. That the writers of Scripture put down they saw not what was really true. They sort of put down what they saw. But he said what they saw wasn't true. It was the other way around. So he had entered into biblical interpretation. As we know, the church defended a geocentric reading and Galileo was found guilty of suspect of heresy. When it came to it, Bruno, who had been burned at the stake 15 years before Galileo was told, he didn't retract. He stuck with his heresies, and because he was a priest, that's why Bruno was burned at the stake. Because in those days they believed burning one man at the stake was better than allowing him to send countless other people to hell with the heresy he would be spreading. So that's the way they saw why it was worth getting rid of Bruno, so that the souls of others would not be ending up in hell. The next astronomer on the scene was Domenico Cassini, God's astronomer, I call him. Cassini's measurements of orbits found that they are Cassinian ovals, the orbit of the sun. What Cassini did was, he was a great astronomer. He measured the width of the sun every day of the year. And that way he was able to calculate what the shape of the orbit of the sun, because that's what we see. We see the sun moving. So he was able to calculate, which was a Cassinian oval. He didn't see any significance in that, but later on the Cassinian oval turned out to be one of the most extraordinary discoveries of all time. But nobody knows about it, because Cassini was a geocentrist, and at this stage now, the Freemasonry was on its way to making sure that any proof or anything that suggested geocentrism was forgotten about, and only the heliocentrists were allowed their different theories.
And how did he measure the orbit, the sun orbiting around the Earth?
How?
How did he measure?
Every day he measured it, right? And he was able to tell by the width of it how it was going around the sun. It took years and years for him to finalise it. And his Cassinian oval has never been disputed. But he was up against Kepler's ellipse. And there's a difference between the two. And I'll tell you that now in a second. Now here's what Andrew White wrote in his history of the great fight between religion and science. But ere long it was seen that this triumph of the Church against Galileo was in reality a defeat. From all sides came proofs that Copernicus and Galileo were right. That book is still on sale today, you know. In 1871, Albert Pike, Grand Master of the ancient Scottish Rites of Freemasonry, explained how this new world order advanced. How did they manage to win the war, so to speak? And I quote Albert Pike: "Science perishes by systems that are nothing but beliefs. And faith succumbs to reasoning." Now imagine that I can convince you and eliminate your faith if I give a reason to eliminate it. So the faith at the time was that the Bible says that the sun and stars move. But I'm going to convince you that it's the other way around, so that you will reject what the Bible has to say. And once you start rejecting anything that the Bible has to say, you're on the path to heresy after heresy after heresy. Science perishes by systems that are nothing but beliefs, and faith succumbs to reasoning. How was this achieved? Well, knowing they were unable to fix the sun and move the earth from the centre of the cosmos using deductive science. It can't be done with science. Science can't do it. They conspired instead to achieve their aims by means of intellectual stealth, inventing causes. If I can invent a cause why that light is shining, you will accept that cause that I'm after giving you. For their heliocentric movement, I'm calling them laws of nature. First were founded scientific academies like the Académie des Lincei of Rome in 1603, and in 1660 the Royal Society of London for the promotion of natural knowledge. Isaac Newton's theory of universal gravity was promoted by the Freemasonic-run Royal Society of London as the first proof for heliocentrism, a solar system with an orbiting Earth around the Sun. Newton's theory said particles attract one another, so cosmic bodies attract one another, and the Sun, because it's the biggest, attracts all the planets to turn around it. See, if they attract one another, then the big one will attract all the other ones. And that's how you get a solar system. Simple, isn't it? The maths of Newton said all would orbit in Keplerian ellipses. Newton's maths depends on Kepler's ellipses being correct. But Cassini had already falsified Kepler's ellipses. But Cassini was considered, he was the Pope's astronomer, and they didn't want that. But Domenico Cassini had proven orbits of Cassinian ovals, so the fact alone falsifies Newton's mathematics. It was falsified by Cassini way back then. Remember, Newton also claimed the Earth attracts the apple falling from a tree. Remember that? The famous apple. In other words, gravity is a pushing force, he says. Given Newton had no proof for his theory, no, it was a pulling force. Given Newton had no proof for his theory, gravity could well be a pushing force. I got the two of them wrong here. In other words, Newton proved nothing. But with the Freemasonic Society of Science claiming it was a proven fact, the idea that Newton proved the Church was wrong is now recorded in history. Last week I quoted a Catholic scholar, Stillman Drake, who said Isaac Newton was the first to prove the Earth orbits the Sun with the planets. I'll give you that quote again. It is now often said that incontrovertible evidence for the Earth's annual motion was not found until the early 19th century, when high-precision astronomical instruments first detected the parallax of certain fixed stars. Direct evidence of the Earth's daily rotation is similarly said to have been awaited the Foucault pendulum in the mid-19th century. Such statements are titillating, but they misrepresent the grounds of scientific conviction. No scientist, even then, had lingering doubts he gave up at the time of these events. The issue of the Earth's motion had been effectively settled by scientists by Newton's law of universal gravitation, which linked innumerable astronomical measurements and the occurrence of tides to the existence of the Earth's two motions. Now remember, with Newton's theory of attracting particles will eventually come the evolution of the universe by way of attracting particles. See how it sneaked in? The first little evolutionary theory sneaked in. Indeed, Newton was the first to suggest that evolution by way of the shape of the Earth. We're talking now about the shape of the Earth. Which brings us to another phenomenon of the universe, the precession of the equinoxes. Okay, now, Newton said that there's a thing called the precession of the equinoxes, right? And Newton says that the shape of the Earth spinning with a bulge from when it was evolving, he had it when it was evolving, made it like a gyroscope. And that's how, if you have a fixed sun, right, and you have the Earth like that, that's how you can get the sun going up and down to cause the seasons. Do you get it? Okay. Now, there's the two methods why we get the seasons.
It's kicked everyone out.
I don't know if I have another one there. Have I? Now you can pass it around. Okay, so that's what that is how we get summer and winter. You can have it two ways, as I say. You can have the universe spinning like a gyroscope, or you can have the Earth spinning like a gyroscope, right? Either way, you get the same thing. So one doesn't prove the other. Newton's heliocentrism claimed it was the Earth shifting like a gyroscope that caused the seasons. And I've just explained it to you. Now, the next proof recorded in history was a proof called stellar aberration. 1726, stellar aberration. And I'm going to do another quote. It was not until Copernicus had been some 200 years in his grave that Bradley in 1726 discovered the aberration of light and converted what had up then to been a more or less probable theory into an incontrovertible fact. So, what was stellar aberration? Well, I'll just tell you what it was. Bradley looked through his telescope at the stars, and in a year he had to move the telescope in a tiny circle. So in other words, he saw that the stars move in a circle every year. And he said that proves the Earth is going around the sun. Now I would have thought that if you saw the stars doing a circle, it was the stars that were doing the circle, wouldn't you? No, he said it's stellar. It proves that the Earth it's going around, and that's why you think you see the stars moving, or the aberration of the light from the stars moving. It is just so ludicrous. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, you'll get a physicist, a professor, who will come before and tell you that this proves that the Earth is going around the sun. The fact that I can see that in a year, all the stars doing a little circle. to me, if I see all the stars doing a little circle, why aren't all the stars doing a little circle? Okay, so then the next one was parallax. Oh, just in case I miss it. In 1728, the English astronomer James Bradley provided first evidence of the Earth's motion through space on the aberration of light. Dava Sobel and Galileo's daughter. Another quote, this discovery, stellar aberration, proved the first direct physical confirmation of the Copernican theory. McGraw-Hill, Encyclopedia of Science. You couldn't make it up. It's the most stupid thing I ever heard in my life is that seeing the stars are doing a little circle proves the Earth is going around the sun. Anyway, they got away with it. To make a long story short, James Bradley found that all the stars, I've just explained that. Then in 1838, parallax was eventually found. Now I'll explain parallax to you. If you're on the Earth, right, and there's the sun, and I go around, I'm the Earth going around the sun, I will see a star move compared to the star behind, right? You can do it. You can do it yourself. I've just seen one person in the front move in comparison with the one behind, right? That's what I've just seen. So he said, finally, that's the proof we've been looking for hundreds of years. Again, if the stars were moving, you'd see exactly the same parallax. There's no more proof than the man in the moon. It's beyond belief that they actually proposed these things, and in all those books, they're all just will tell you, oh, that was the end of it, that was the proof of it all. Now, there was another thing that happened with parallax, and this is very interesting, and I have to get it out here now. Yeah. The distances of the stars was determined by way of parallax. If the Earth is going around the sun, and we know that the star is there, we can measure that and tell the age, right? But in the geocentric one, which is the one on the left, a geocentric parallax.
On the right.
Pardon?
Geocentric one's on the right.
On the right, yeah. Left here. You see that there's no way you can tell. There's no way you can tell a measurement of the distance of a star. You get it? They say that's how you measure the distance of stars, right? But if in the heliocentric one, you can't tell the distance of stars because you don't have those lines, distances, and the base level at all. But you will read any number of encyclopedias on how do they know the distance of stars, and they'd say it was stellar parallax was proven, and it proves the distance of stars. Well, if stellar parallax was never proven, which it wasn't, and if the geocentric way of looking at stars is true, you can't measure the distance of stars.
You can or can't?
You can't. There's no way if you can move it. Right. So now we come to two of the most interesting of all. Did anyone ever hear the Foucault pendulum? It is supposed to be the first, I'll just read this here. John Bernard Leon Foucault, in 1851 in the Pantheon in Paris, set up a ball hanging from a string from a dome 220 foot above. The bob swung a 20-foot diameter ring containing wet sand at the bottom, and as it swung, it moved a groove as it moved in time. It could continue to cut out new ridges until it formed a curve of cuts. Truly it looked as if it was accomplishing something very specific, and aided by the claims of Foucault, this was indeed a demonstration of the Earth's rotation. The ability of this display to convince even the most sceptical was instantaneous. Now, I'll give you this in a head. There he is, proving the Earth rotates. See the picture? He's proving the Earth rotates.
Until it stops swinging after a while.
Now,
To a halt.
I'll explain. Now, when I was investigating that, I got in touch with a man. Well, first of all, I'll read how convincing that experiment that's up on top worked. Like a demon on horseback, news of Foucault's pendulum and its success in supposedly showing the Earth rotates spread far and wide. As the devil would have it, the greater heights of cathedral roofs pointing to God's heaven were deemed the most suitable for hanging the wire and ball of the pendulum, so operations were set up in churches such as Reims, Amiens, Saint Jacques, Marseille, San Perotona, St. Bavarax in Haarlem, St. Peter's and St. Paul's Church in Krakow, St. Isaac's Cathedral, St. Petersburg. Soon all sizes of pendulums began operations throughout Europe and beyond. So they actually used churches to prove the Bible was wrong. And they hung these, because the higher they are, the better they are. This ball is supposed to be moving. And as I, in my book, describe it, it's like saying, if I could jump in the air and hold my feet long enough up in the air, the earth would revolve underneath me. Because that's exactly what it's proposing. So effective was the pendulum that they placed them in many key locations to ensure most observers from on would see them for themselves, the earth supposedly rotating. Wikipedia records the following countries that exhibit these Foucault pendulums today, proving the earth rotates. Austria 1, Belarus 1, Belgium 4, Bulgaria 1, Czech Republic 3, Denmark 3, Finland 4, France 3, Germany 16, Hungary 1, Iceland 1, Italy 7, Lithuania 1, Luxembourg 1, Moldova 1, Netherlands 2, Norway 3, Poland 6, Portugal 2, Romania 3, Russia 7, Serbia 1, Spain 9, Sweden 5, Switzerland 4, South Africa 5, United Kingdom 11, Tunisia 1, India 6, Iran 2, Israel 4, Japan 6, Pakistan 1, Thailand 1, Turkey 2, Canada 14, USA 147. Central and South America 7, Australia 7, New Zealand 7 and Antarctica 1. Over 300 in all.
Ireland doesn't have any? Ireland doesn't have any?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That is how important this propaganda demo is held by the Earthmovers. Indeed, in September 2013, as I watched and went into Google, they put up in the first search page logo had a Foucault pendulum. Now, here's Dava Sobel in Galileo's daughter again. Leo Foucault in Paris demonstrates the rotation of the Earth by means of a 200-foot pendulum. So much for the propaganda. Now for the truth of it. It comes from a 20-year investigation study of the Foucault pendulum by Richard Ellendorf, completed in 1994. I got in touch with him personally, and we wrote to one another, and he sent me his opinion. Ellendorf, an engineer by profession, has to be the world's leading expert on truth of the subject by far. I corresponded with Richard and he told me the truth, and I quote, "My findings about the Foucault pendulum may very well astonish you. The surprising truth is that all Foucault pendulums are fakes. Most of them are fakes because they are forced to do what they do rather than doing what comes naturally, and all the rest of them are fakes insofar as they are used as proofs of the Earth's supposed rotation. The only kind of Foucault pendulum which would not be a fake would be one that was free swinging, operated properly, and either had no explanation, plaques or literature associated with it, or had such which plainly acknowledged that it cannot determine absolute rotation. I know of no such pendulum, Foucault pendulum, anywhere. The Foucault pendulum is a piece of scientific apparatus specifically designed to build and deceive and mislead. It is literally a humbug, a sham, a fake, a fraud, an artifice, pretense, a hoax, and I believe it should be exposed as such. But the Foucault pendulum is more than a hoax. It actually is a religious propaganda tool. Foucault pendulum displays have something very serious and important to prove." Right? So, what the Foucault pendulum is supposed to be determined by the Earth's rotation, but it never goes around. Never does the turn. It just does a bit of one, and then sometimes it works and then it doesn't work. All it proves is that there is an inertia on Earth, something capable of moving that as it's going around. Now, modern science physics has concluded, after, of course, a couple of experiments told them that all this is bunkum, they now know that the inertia can be caused by a rotating Earth or a rotating universe around the Earth. That is the modern physics that they had to admit to after two experiments, which we get to very shortly. So the Foucault pendulum it's just a sham. And I'll tell you where there's one, in the United Nations building. Yeah. So that they all could see the Earth rotating every day, all the leaders of the world. Now, we now have to move on to evolutionism, because it was heliocentrism, as I said. It began with Newton saying that the Earth bulge, the bits come together, and the Earth, when it was flying around, it was forming in all its shape and all bulge. The first modern theory of evolution came to support the natural origin of heliocentrism, and I quote, "A model of star and planet formation in which a nebula contracts under the force of gravity, eventually flattened into a spinning disk with a central bulge." That's Newton again, the Earth with its central bulge. "A protostar, that's the sun, forms at the nebula's centre. As matter condenses around the protostar in the bulge, planets are formed from the spinning matter in the disk. This theory is widely accepted and accounts for the formation of stars and planetary systems such as ours." He takes it for granted, the solar system. "The first version of the nebular hypothesis was proposed in 1755 by Immanuel Kant and modified in 1796 by Pierre Laplace." Right? So that's when evolution began. It began with the evolution of heliocentrism, solar system. So the next was uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism is based on the theory that layers of sedimentary rock found all over the world were laid down during different ages over billions of years. You know all that, all about the, oh yeah, billions of years. And I quote, sedimentary rock formed by an accumulation of layers in a variety of environments, such as the sea floor, lake or desert. The sediments will eventually consolidate to become rock strata layers. Generally, the lowest layers are the oldest, and the upper layers and any plant and animal remain they contain will be older, and will any minerals that formed during or soon after the deposit. That's GNS Science website. In other words, the deeper it is, the older it is, and the up the top, that's the earliest. Well, experiments conducted at the University of Colorado by sedimentologist Guy Berthoud between 1985 and 1990 have shattered all conceived assertion that sediments were laid down one layer on top of another throughout time. In fact, Berthoud, testing sedimentation with sediments in tanks of moving water, found sediments are laid down in a sideways motion, demonstrating the bottom strata of deposits, always considered the oldest according to that science, can well be younger than the top strata further back along the path of any deposit. If it's going that way, you follow me? If it's going that way, it could be. Then there was Robert Gentry, who said such sedimentary formations would have to include aspects of atomic radiation that left behind in certain rock, but that science did not begin until 1895, searching for atomic residue in rock. It seems there is a radioactivity going on within some rocks, and it leaves behind evidence of this activity and decay. That's how they can age the world. If they find a certain type of atomic radiation, and they say it takes so many years for it to disappear, they can calculate billions of years and so on from it. As one would expect, it's a complicated science, and of course also used to age the Earth at billions of years old, just like the layers of sediments. And the fossils found in them are used by the evolutionists to convince us all it took millions of years. In 1962, when he first proposed that he do a thesis on earlier investigations of radioactivity history of rock, as his PhD, it was rejected on the basis that this science had already ended and any find other than established could challenge their years of evolutionary opinion. He wasn't allowed to investigate it in case he found something that would differ than the evolutionists' billions of years. So what did he do? Such was Robert Gentry's determination to do the resting. He began it on his own premises, at his own expense. Whereas he said many millions of taxpayers' dollars were given to the evolutionists to pursue their propaganda, there being no funding for something that might contradict their findings. So how does one go about dating a piece of granite? You crush it, he said in his lecture, do some chemistry on it, and extract chemical elements out of it like uranium and active radiation, and examine the halos left after activity. To make a long story short, Gentry found halos in certain rocks like granite that were instant, with little or no time in their decay. In other words, he said it was God's marker left behind when he created that kind of rock instantly. See it at the bottom. See the bottom? They're the halos that Gentry found are instant. There is no decay in them at all. Now, the next biblical revelation to be jettisoned was that of Noah's flood covered all the earth. We all know. I quote the Bible. The deluge, this is what the Bible says. The great flood which covered the whole land or region. No, I'm quoting a modern Bible, right? The great flood which covered the whole land or region in which Noah lived, Genesis 6:1-9-19. God sent this flood to destroy all men in this region because of their wickedness. Noah and his family alone were spared. Scriptural scholars, these are the new lads, say that the flood did not necessarily cover the whole earth as we know it today. Some even hold that it not necessarily destroyed all the people on earth. Now the Bible says Noah and his three sons and their wives were the only people left on earth. But the Holy Bible, the Catholic Press Incorporated, Chicago, 1951, states that some say it didn't even destroy all the people on earth, and it wasn't over the whole earth. So does Father Robinson, and I'll quote him. Here's what Father Paul Robinson, you know who he is. This position on the flood has been graphically universal, meets with serious scientific difficulties.
You just said that we should know who Paul Robertson is. I don't know. Could you just...
Who?
Who's Father Robinson?
Father Paul Robinson, SSPX.
Okay.
He's written a book, and some of his fellow priests are ashamed of that book. Others ignore it for want of their lives. And you have all the people who think it's absolutely the best thing that's ever been written,
And it's about, and the topic is what?
Pardon?
And what's the topic?
Heliocentric.
He's a pro-heliocentric.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'll give you an example of what he is, right? Here's what he said. This position on the flood has been graphically universal, as the Bible states, reveals. The Bible, Moses said it, meets with serious scientific difficulties. For one, how can you get enough rain to cover the whole earth? The Bible describes the waters of the flood as coming from the fountains of the great deep and the floodgates of heaven. Clearly this is popular, but it's not a scientific description. To impose a scientific sense upon the Bible then is to do violence to the sacred text and the divinely intended meaning. He said there's no... I'll give you my reaction to it. Now, 75% of the Earth's surface rock is sedimentary. 75% of the whole surface of the Earth is sedimentary. So this means there had to be local floods over 75% of the Earth. 75% of the Earth had local floods. Today there are sedimentary mountains. For this to happen, the water had to be higher than the mountains in local floods. There's mountains now of sedimentary rock. So for local floods, that means the water had to be far higher than the mountains they are today. Now just think about it. A local flood with water over the highest mountain. Imagine if you had, what's the highest mountain in Ireland?
Carntill.
If you, to have water over the highest mountain in Ireland, would cover all of Ireland, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that kind of suggest a global flood, Anyway, the only explanation is that these waters had to be global higher than any sedimentary mountain seen today. This long-age theory built up on sedimentary rock also did away with the dates given in Genesis, yet another theory adopted by churchmen rather than revealed in Genesis time. Blessed Catherine Emmerich, her age for Jesus is the exact same as found in Scripture. Adam, 5 days. Noah and the flood, 1056. That is 2941 BC from our point of view. Abraham, 1950 after creation. Exodus 2540 after creation, the birth of Jesus 399 years after creation, the death of Jesus 4030 after creation at 33 years, the fall of Jerusalem 4070 after creation, the world on 2000 after creation was 5,997 years old. 2022 years after Christ was born makes the world 6,018 years old according to the Bible. So we're only 6,000. But so
Redmond,
yeah.
we're coming up to an hour and a half, so
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, well, let me see now. We are on to the Big Bang. You know the Big Bang. Very, very briefly, the Big Bang. Hubble saw that the stars are moving out, right? And he said, if we extrapolate something moving out, we come back in, what caused something to be moving out has to be a Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago, right? Now, what they didn't know was that in Copernicus's book, he said that that geocentrism couldn't be right, because if it was, if the stars were spinning, they would be like the children on the, you know, the swing and the carnivals. They would all go out. So Copernicus says, if geocentrism was right and the stars are swinging, they would all expand. So there's a geocentric explanation for the expansion of the universe. But they only picked the one that said it started from a Big Bang. And they said 13.5 billion years ago. And Father Robinson states that the world is 13.5 billion, 7 billion years old. Because the furthest star is 13.7 billion light years away, right? That means from a Big Bang beginning, it would take for a star to reach 13.5 billion. Now, had he read Genesis, he would have found that God created the stars visible to the first man and woman that he created. But that's a supernatural creation of the stars, not a scientific one. And Genesis can't be, you know, it has to comply with. I put in my book that if Father Paul Robinson had been at the wedding that the Lord asked, Mary asked the Lord to change water into wine, and he got a of the wine, he said, oh my God, that wine, it's so mature, it couldn't possibly have been immediately created from water, you know. Say they must have had it hidden around the back or something like that. So that's really the kind of the history of all the science involved. And I've gone through every one with a fine-tooth comb, and there isn't a single one. But there were two experiments done in 1880 and 1877, and both of them showed the Earth does not move around the sun. And Einstein had to come along and say, okay, then we admit it. It was never proven that the Earth doesn't go around the or one or the other. The church was never proven wrong. And he came up with his theories of relativity, which have been proven wrong themselves. But that's a complicated business, how you can do that. And it's been done. So there we are. That's the whole history of science. A load of bull to think that anything ever proved. But when you have professors in universities saying it, you take their word before you take mine. I needn't tell you that. But if you have faith, and a Catholic faith, you will know that the Church and the Bible cannot be proven wrong, irrespective of how many popes or churchmen went along with it. You can take it that the geocentrism of the Bible, as as declared and defined in 1616 is the truth, and that's it. And one of the as I said last time, the last thing is not one pope ever challenged the 1616 decree, and that is the sign of that God is looking after his church. He said he will never allow a pope to contradict a defined dogma. And no pope in the history, even though they're all going along with it, none of them ever dared challenge the 1616 decree. I think we've done enough for today, haven't
Well,
we?
well done. Will you take a few questions?
Yeah, I'll take any amount of questions, yeah.
Who was the Pope in 1616?
Yeah, please. Thanks.
Pardon?
Who was the Pope in 1616?
Pope Paul V.
Up on the
The gentleman down the back,
Yeah, so-
William, is it?
It is, yeah, Liam here. So I need to start from the beginning here now, and it's going to take me a few minutes, but hopefully we'll get to the problem. So when you say, or you said originally, the movement of the sun and the stars,
Yeah,
right? So automatically I think of Newgrange,
yeah,
and they're looking down at the winter solstice,
yeah,
and then it rises up along the horizon in a straight line, the
Yeah.
movement of the sun, and it gets to the summer solstice,
yeah,
which is the other direction,
Yeah.
northeast.
yeah.
So the sun does move, according to where you were looking from Earth.
Yeah, it does.
But it doesn't go in a circle. It goes in a straight line, up and down, bobbles up and down.
Yeah,
Okay? That's the sign. And then you said Moses knows the number of years.
yeah.
So when, Moses knows the number of years, so when was he? What's the year that Moses lived?
When did Moses live?
Yeah. What's the year that he lived?
I don't
He
know.
knows the years.
But when Moses wrote the Bible, he was inspired by God to write it. He didn't.
He knows the years, so what year did he write the Bible in?
Oh, I don't know what year it was. Was it
And
3,000
does Moses not
years
tell
ago?
you?
Pardon?
Does Moses not tell you? He knows the years. So if
Yeah.
he knows the years,
Yeah.
then he's writing down the years that he
Yeah.
lived. Okay? So then you come to, which you missed, Pythagoras. Now Pythagoras...
I dealt with him last week.
Okay, Pythagoras came up with the model of the universe that has the Earth at the bottom of the universe. And everything else is built above it, like the winter solstice, and everything goes up. That was Pythagoras. And then you missed
Pythagoras was a heliocentrist.
No,
He was.
The actual Earth is at the bottom of the system, and Plato then came along and destroyed his system, and made geocentric, made the universe geocentric, and put the Earth at the center. A geocentric system, which lasted from Plato's time, 300 BC, to, well, you missed Julius Caesar along the way, who came in with a calendar that had 365 and a quarter days, which is not fit for purpose. Pythagoras is not fit for purpose, Plato is not fit for purpose, Moses is not fit for purpose, and the movement of the sun and the stars is not fit for purpose. So that's our problem. And then you mentioned Ptolemy, right?
Yeah?
And he came up with a system trying to take in Julius Caesar and Plato, and he put it along, but he was proven wrong eventually. And then he came up with Copernicus and his heliocentric system, demolishing everybody who came before him, right? Demolished everybody who came before him and put in this heliocentric system to say that this is the correct way to watch everything, right? But then you miss the most important part of the whole discussion here. 1582, it's not 1602, it's not 1633, it's 1582, when the church changed the calendar by 10 days. So now we know Copernicus, well, not Copernicus, now we know Ptolemy, Julius Caesar, Plato, Pythagoras, Moses, and the movement of the sun are all wrong because the earth is out by 10 days. Now, if you can prove to me why that's the case, before you go into anything else, going into all these other people that come in with Galileo, Kepler, Cosimo, Isaac Newton, if you can prove to me the reason why that happened, then I believe it. If you can't, then everything's up for discussion. And that's the problem with this theory.
If I could prove Moses.
No, if you can prove in 1582 why the calendar was moved by 10 days.
I know why it was moved.
Well, you never mentioned it here.
I know, because there's enough to do without
Well, no, but
getting
that's
back
the
to
whole
the
point of this
movement of the
exercise.
days.
If you can prove that, why it was moved by 10 days, then we'll all
I know
follow
why it was
your
moved
theory. We'll
for
all
10
follow your
days.
theory.
It was
Can
due.
I answer the
Sorry,
question?
we came to listen to this gentleman, and we all have maybe a similar mind. We came to listen, not to be strident. So that's what we're here tonight about, just to listen, really.
And I have listened. And
Yeah,
I've told
yeah,
them all
yeah,
where
well-
the errors are.
Well, if you want to hold your own speech somewhere, you notify
Well,
us.
no, sorry. I have just heard all his arguments.
Yes, and then you disagree with them. That's fine.
No,
We understand.
I've proven it.
Okay, well,
So if you can prove then what the 10 days are, what are the missing 10 days?
I
and you-
know where the missing 10 days came from.
Okay.
It was due to precession of the. You see, a year, an earthly year, and a star year are different. One is a few minutes behind the other. So over a period of a couple of thousand of years, the days go back. So he just brought it back into focus. I know all about it. I have it all written up
Well,
in my
there's
book.
3 scientific reasons why it should occur. And you've only given me 1. So hence you don't know the other 2. And hence I disagree with you. And until you give me the other 2, and everybody else out there gives me the other 2, including the church, then I might agree.
It was to
with what you're saying.
bring back the holidays of the church back into sync. That was the reason it was done.
No, because
It was the
Julius-
Pope who did it.
No, it was Julius Caesar's calendar was out. by
Yeah,
10
it
days.
was out. But it was the Pope who revised it.
No.
And it'll have to be done again in a few more thousand
Yeah, and
years.
Galileo then came along and said, well, listen, this calendar's wrong. So the tides...
Galileo had nothing to do with the calendar.
Well, he's saying that the tides are the reason why the Earth goes around, and hence
Yeah.
we can take on this new calendar because it goes around rather than the Earth is the centre. And you've proven that Galileo
New
is
calendar.
a smart aleck, and he should be put in prison, and he should have stayed in prison. We've proven that because the tides don't make the Earth circle the Earth. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Any other
Question?
questions rather than lectures for me?
I'm not clear of the church's position on the heliocentric or the geocentric. It's a very strange.
Okay. Well, interesting. This is probably one of the most interesting questions anyone could say. Pope Leo XIII is quoted as having put forward the church's position with regard to heliocentrism or geocentrism. You'll find I have probably about 15 quotes for over 100 years saying Leo in his Preventissimus Deus, he said that we have to go along with heliocentrism. He did not say that. Because earlier in his encyclical, he said, when all the fathers are agreed on an interpretation of Scripture, that is irreversible, right? And then down he said, but sometimes there are things said that science has proven wrong. And of course, that was kind of a little hint that maybe it was the Galileo case he was talking about. And people used that. But none of them see that he had already stated when all the fathers are in agreement, that's it. So theologically, the church has still to accept the geocentrism. But in their talks and their doing everything else, they're all heliocentric evolutionists, all of them. All of them. You'd frighten you if with Pope Pius XII going before the Pontifical Academy of Science saying the Big Bang was God's creation 13.7 billion years ago.
I was at it's a kind of a Bible study, and that's exactly what was said. The priest given the Dominicans, and he said that he was talking about Genesis, and then he said, you know, with the Big Bang, this was creation, this was creation. I asked the question, okay, can you define what you're talking about, the Big Bang? And he said, the Big Bang creation. That's simply what it is, the Big Bang creation. So like if we're given the creation, everything was created in 6 days, it wasn't a Big Bang.
What they're doing now is they're trying to make Catholicism and the Bible fit in with their science, or so-called science. So they said the Big Bang, but I have a great quote from a philosopher who said, sure, the Big Bang could have been caused by a god. It could have been a pagan god. What's the Big Bang got to do with the Trinity? They're just trying to get the Big Bang as their God. But the Muslims could say it was their God who created the Big Bang. So the Big Bang doesn't prove God created the world at all. The only one that is Genesis, that he created all immediately. Oh, there's 2 dogmas of the Catholic Church, one by the Lateran Council, one by Vatican I, says that God created all in its whole substance, immediately at the beginning of time. What does all in its whole substance mean? It's not something it means it's finished. And that's a dogma. And yet, they can even ignore that. So, that's it.
There's
Yeah.
a cup of tea.
Okay, that gentleman there wants to ask something.
Can I just ask one small question? In Genesis itself, doesn't it say that that God created light and darkness?
Yes.
Okay. And then
No, he created light.
Yeah.
It doesn't say he created darkness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he created light, yeah. So, and then I think it was a few days later he created the sun and the stars.
Yes.
So does that not suggest then that that Genesis, that particular part of Genesis, should not be taken strictly?
Well, St. Augustine explained that. He said the reason God put it that way, he did not want people thinking that it was the sun and stars that created light.
It's energy.
So that's why he said, I created light. And later on, I created the sun to use that light that I had created to provide day and night. Augustine said that it was deliberate, because the pagans would have said, oh, light was created by the sun. And also, of course, you know that the light that God created in the beginning included the angels.
Yeah, but they'd say that it was the light of the galaxy.
Yeah, well, it had two different. Light, as we know, is an element of electromagnetism, right? And therefore, God must have created electromagnetism if he created light at the beginning. And I told you Domenico Cassini's oval. When I went into it, I discovered that his oval, that is the orbit of the sun, is connected with electromagnetism. It has exactly the same way electromagnetic thing works, right? And not only that, but a friend of mine, he did the mathematics of God's creation and discovered that the orbits are actually connected to pi. And pi is the shape of leaves and ears and snails, and it's in everything, blood cells and all. In other words, Cassini's oval accidentally discovered that God's creation of the orbit of the sun is similar to all the other creations that he has down here with pi, which is just astonishing, so it is.
But that goes around the galaxy. The orbit of the sun goes around the galaxy.
the galaxy, all the galaxies move in
And that's the first
pi.
light. And that's the first light.
Yeah, in pi.
And then the second light is formed by the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
Well, it's used by God to
So you have
give that
two,
light.
Yeah, so you have two different areas.
Yeah, so the Bible talks about two lights,
Yes.
the first light and then the sun
Yeah,
and the
the
moon.
galaxy is of light, and then the sun and the earth.
There's a very good documentary or commentary on the Genesis, and it's released by the Colby Centre together in collaboration with Robert Sejenis, and it's called God Made the World in 6 Days. So it's going to be 6 different documentaries. Day one is out now. You can if you go to if you just Google it or go into Colby Centre or Robert Sejenis his website. You can watch that, and he does a very good job on animating the whole thing as well, on this initial light. And he says there's the original light, you can still, traces of it can be still found in the universe, or have been found. So I really encourage you to watch that documentary, and it really goes into in depth into the first day of Genesis. So it's
The way I
very
look at that is
enlightening.
that the first 3 days are all the material parts of the universe, which is you get your eggs, you smash them, you put your egg, you put her in, you put whatever fruit you want in, mix them all up, and put them in. And then you put it into the oven and it bakes. Then you take it out, and the next 3 days you start decorating the cake. So the first 3 days are the light and those things that were made. And then the second are all the animals, the beasts, and the flowers, and the trees, and everything else that was made on the second day. That's true. So that's the way you look at it.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay,
Oh, I can't wait for you to go to heaven and get the book out.
I'm looking forward to the cake.
Cup of tea and biscuits there.
And don't let the cake drop, whatever you do.
No, Springton
If you welcome back next week.
Okay.
I just have it.
Do you want them maps?
Well, you can hang on to them if you want them.
You want maybe for your next lecture?
No. I could print them off any time.
Couple of down to.
All right, thank you. I'll come back to you.
Excuse me. Sorry, I missed the beginning of your lecture. Just really want to get clear and right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. What I'm trying to do is, history records the church was wrong. It was humiliated for 200 years because it was wrong. I could never live with that. When the church can't interpret the Bible properly, well then you can forget it. I mean, what other thing we could get wrong? So I investigated and discovered that the church wasn't wrong, and I have to find out why. And so,
So whenever you have those 3 reasons for me as to why the 1582 was moved.
I know how it was done.
Well, very good. Then we need to talk.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we need to talk. So
Okay.
when are you ever in Buswells?
I told I'm a non-drinker. My father drank enough of the two.
Well, if you're ever in Buswells, drop in and I'll have a chat with you about it.
Okay.
Okay, go on.
What happened?